Let's begin our meeting with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
Thank you. Let us begin with a call our meeting to order. I have certain things that I need to read in to which alert us all as to how the meeting will be conducted this evening. So with that said, let me just begin. This is a regular meeting of the City of Milton Planning Commission. I'm Ron Gilbert, chairperson. This is a 7-member commission appointed by the City of Milton Mayor and City Council, created for the purpose of holding public hearings and making recommendations on rezoning, use permits, concurrent variance applications, comprehensive land use plan and plan map, and other related plans and amendments to the zoning ordinance. At this time, I'd like to pause and introduce my colleagues. Zach Middlebrook, Fred Edwards, Sumit Shah, Kurt Nolte, John Jacobs, and Marty Locke. The petitions will be heard in the sequence listed in the posted agenda. I would like to acquaint you with some of the rules and procedures for conducting this meeting. The applicant and all those speaking in support of an application will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the petition. The applicant may choose to save some of the time for rebuttal following the presentation by the opposition. The opposition will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present its position. If time remains, the opposition will be allowed to rebut. Since the burden of proof is upon the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks, provided time remains within the allotted time. The staff of the Community Development Department will be keeping track of time and will inform you periodically of remaining time for your presentation. Each speaker must fill out a speaker card before speaking and leave it with a member of staff of the Community Development Department. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization, if applicable, before beginning their presentation. When an opponent of a rezoning action has made within 2 years immediately preceding the filing of the rezoning action being opposed, campaign contributions aggregating $250 or more to a local government official of the local government which will consider the application, it is the duty of the opponent to file a disclosure with the governing authority of the respective local government at least 5 days prior to the Planning Commission meeting. A violation of the relevant state statute constitutes a misdemeanor. Therefore, if you have contributed $250 or more to a council member and you have not filed a disclosure prior to the Planning Commission meeting, the city attorney strongly suggests that you have someone else speak for your point of view. Each application has been properly filed with the Department of Community Development. Signs have been posted on each site. The matter has been advertised and notices have been mailed to property owners affected by the zoning, as required by the Milton Zoning Ordinance. The Planning Commission's recommendation will be forwarded to the City of Milton Mayor and City Council for final disposition in approximately 5 weeks' time on the first Monday of each month at 6 p.m. in chambers. The Community Development Department has reviewed each application in conjunction with various agencies and departments, both internal and external to the city. Staff's recommendations, findings, and conclusions are here before us as written in form, which has been made available to all petitioners and to the public. Demonstrations of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, dialogue with the person speaking, or outbursts. Please turn off your cell phones. Let me repeat, please turn off your cell phones or place them on silent. All remarks will be addressed by the Planning Commission. Please show the same respect for the person speaking that you would expect to receive yourself. In addition, the applicant shall not submit material to the Planning Commission during the meeting unless requested to do so by the Commission. All materials that you wish to be reviewed by the Commission in consideration of your application should be submitted to the staff of the Community Development Department to be included in the normal distribution packages to the Commission. Finally, to the applicant, if your petition is deferred in accordance with Milton zoning ordinance, you are required to update or obtain a new sign for reposting. Failure to update or repost will result in further delays, and there are no exceptions. This evening, we are welcoming guests via Zoom so they can participate virtually. And if you are out there and attending, I'd like to give you some guidelines on your participation. Everyone on Zoom is muted, and your videos are turned off by default to minimize any disruptions. If you would like to make a comment during the public hearing portion of the meeting, please raise your hand by clicking on the icon labeled Participants at the bottom of your screen, and then click the button labeled Raise Hand. Once the moderator calls your name, please unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone button on the bottom of your screen, and we'll be able to get you into the conversation. We also are considering this evening a preliminary plat, and the Planning Commission is tasked by the city's subdivision ordinance to conduct a public hearing on proposed preliminary plats that have been found to be complete by the Community Development Department. At the conclusion of the public hearing, the Planning Commission is required to review the proposed preliminary plat and provide comments and make recommendations regarding the plat to the Community Development Director. The Planning Commission does not approve or reject the proposed preliminary plat, but merely provides comments or recommendations based on the public hearing and the Planning Commission's view of the proposed preliminary plat. I guess the next thing on our list is the approval of the action minutes. Is there any discussion of the action minutes as presented? No. Would anyone care to make a motion with regard to the action minutes?
Sure, I will. I move that we approve the Planning Commission action minutes from Wednesday, June 24th, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Sumit. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimously passed.
Okay.
The next agenda item, I skipped over public comment.
I'll do the presentation first.
Okay.
Yes.
So
we
then-
do have some participants for public comment, as well as the applicant's representative is here. But I'll do the presentation first, and then if the applicant's representative wants to make any comments, and then we'll take each of the public comments, and then obviously the applicant's representative will be here to answer questions as well as staff. So,
right.
And pardon me, before I start, I wanted to introduce to you one of our new staff members is Tracy Wild. So she is our new land development manager. Say plan review. No, it's land development manager. So she's kind of learning the ropes. She's done awesome. And so she's going to watch me tonight. So any subsequent meetings that we have, preliminary plats, she'll be here to present them to you. So we're really happy to have Tracy here. And anyway, I want to introduce her to you. And then also wanted to introduce Sam Volkenberg, because he is the author of and helped staff with the text amendments for the temporary fireworks stand. So in lieu of Paul, he got a night off. We asked Sam I'm sorry. There used to be another Paul that used to come. But anyway, he'll be here to answer questions, as well as Alex Fortner. When we get to the text amendments, he's our fire marshal, and he's also very, very familiar with all the regulations. So he's here and happy to answer questions as well. So with that said, I will start the presentation on the preliminary plat that is on your agenda tonight. It is called Providence Point. It is on the northeast quadrant of the circle of Birmingham Highway and New Providence. It contains 6.55 acres and owned by CMZ Equities, Mike Zito. It's currently undeveloped, as you could see from the location map, and they're proposing 5 single-family lots of minimum 1 acre at 0.76 units per acre, and it is currently zoned AG1. So this is just the cover sheet with all the information that we require, and then here's the actual site plan before you. As you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lots to be developed into single-family homes, and then you'll see a detention area on the east side, and then over here is a subdivision, a developed subdivision that it is Hawthorne Manor, directly to the east. And after staff had reviewed it by the various departments, the proposed preliminary plat meets the requirements of the applicable city codes as they pertain to development of this property. So with that said, I'll have the applicant's representative, David White, who's the engineer, come up to be available. Did you want to speak, or do you want to just be available for questions?
I'll be available for questions.
Okay, so Mr. White will be available for questions. So now we'll go ahead and we'll start the public comment cards here. And I apologize for being a little, so this one, CMC. Okay. So just, we don't have a time limit on the public comment for the preliminary plat, so I just wanted to remind everybody of that. But the first speaker will be George Borick, and he is also the representative. Wait, no, he did so. Yes. He also filled out the affidavit to represent the Homeowners Association, so he'll be speaking on behalf of the Homeowners Association. So if you want to go up to the dais, and then you can make your comments.
If you so kind as to restate your name and address, please.
Yes, I will. Good evening. My name is George Borick. I reside at 4545 Hawthorne Court here in Milton. I am one of the board members for our association, and I'm here before you tonight because we do have some questions in regard to this application. And two of the things that, and the secretary was nice enough to send us the plans so we could look at the plans ourselves. And the two concerns we have is that the buffering, where because we abut them, the buffering in the back, as far as, because I see a lot of trees are going to be taken out. It's not clear as far as what the buffering is going to look. But secondly, more important is that our retention basin for stormwater management for our association is in the same area where the applicant's stormwater management, their basin is going to be. So our concern from from the professionals, is there any impact from their basin being in close proximity to ours? So, and those are two questions that I'm bringing forward to yourselves here at the board.
Okay, we appreciate that. We take a note, and I'm sure the applicant will be responsive.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Trip Melton.
Hey, my name is Trip Melton. I live at 14013 Triple Crown Drive, so third house in on the neighborhood that is on the far side of it. My lot, my septic field actually butts up to the property where the access road is going into the cemetery. So I've got one major concern, some other concerns. I do know Mike Zito from a casual basis. I know the type of homes he's builds, so forth. So I'm comfortable with that. We moved in there 17 years ago and knew someone would build on the corners, Gladstone Eye gas station or strip mall. So I mean, I'm good with that. But all the drainage from this proposed development, Hawthorne Manor, and the new roundabout drains into my lot or beside my lot. So I have concerns about what's being done with the drainage that comes down through there. Over the years when we first moved in, it was okay. There wasn't anything developed. Water didn't collect quite as efficiently. As we develop more and then water's collected more efficiently, we see the creek and so forth kind of react in a different way. When we redid the roundabout, the city and the state redid the roundabout, they kind of addressed some of those issues with me and helped us build a little bit more reinforced drainage area. I still have concerns about the way it's being done and what may be done to it, going forward. The other slight concern that I have is the lake that's across the street from us. As they've developed the roundabout and they developed Hawthorne Manor, now the first 100 feet of the lake is nothing but silt. So once again, we're going to see silt come down and fill it up even more. So that's a concern I have. And then the last thing is what someone already expressed is what kind of screening is going to be. I haven't seen any plans or anything like this. This is the first thing that I've seen right here. So, that's where we're coming from.
Okay.
So thank you
very much.
Okay, and I'll ask David White, who is the engineer for the applicant, to come forward to be able to address some of the questions that the neighbors had.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is David White. I'm at 500 Sun Valley Drive, Suite H3, Roswell, Georgia. Here with Civil Logistics, my engineering firm. A little back history on this project. We designed the project starting back in 2016, and I think 2017 we were ready to pull a permit. But Mike, we came down to one last item, planting trees, and Mike was required to replant all of the trees that GDOT had ripped out when they put the roundabout in, and he didn't want to do that because it was going to be over $100,000 worth of trees. So we just kind of stopped and never pulled the permit, and then a month or so ago he asked me to refile it and get it moving again, and of course now the processes are different, and so here we are for a preliminary plat. So this was 100% designed and 99.9% permitted, but it wasn't, and we're starting all over again, hopefully without any too many changes from my perspective. But happy to answer any questions, and I'm happy to stick around and answer any other questions that you guys have afterwards to keep this efficient. So number one, the buffer and the detention impact. So the buffer, I can't remember off the top of my head what it is. I believe it's 20 feet around the pond, and then there's a creek that borders that, maybe 40, 50 feet inset into the property, and that's going to have at least 75-foot buffers all the way around that creek. So probably anywhere from 150 to 200 feet between the property line and these new houses. And, if it's in the area of the upper lots where the stream is, that's all going to be untouched buffer trees. If it's down where the pond is, there's going to be, I believe it's 20 feet. Yeah, 20-foot landscape strip around the pond. Then, of course, there won't be any trees in the pond, and then there'll be trees again on the backyard of that house and then the house. So there will be some 40 feet roughly of buffer trees from one side of the pond to the other, and then, spatial distance as well. So in regards to buffer, that's that. The
What sort of
detention impact.
excuse me a second. What sort of trees will you be using in your buffering around the pond?
We
What's your
had
landscape?
a full, I don't know off the top of my head. I think we submitted the landscape plan initially, but then we were asked to take that out until we get the construction documents. Can you verify if that's correct?
So on this plan here, we have a 20-foot landscape strip around the detention area. So
Right, but we had submitted I think we submitted a landscape plan, and we were asked to take it out. I don't know, we have a
we're
landscape
just looking
plan.
at this, so,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, the previous landscape plan, it met all of the requirements at the time. You know, we'll obviously go through review, and so those could be updated to any new requirements if those have changed. But species of tree was not at the detail for a preliminary plat or requested for, and I think we were actually asked to take it out of the package to simplify it.
Okay.
So the second item, the detention pond, there's no concerns with two detention ponds being next to each other. Presumably, the other detention pond discharges where the water was draining originally. Certainly is the case for this detention pond. So if all the water is going in the original location that it was before, each detention pond will slow down and attenuate any water flows that were coming in that direction, and then also provide water quality. So the stormwater facility is there to as an improvement to water quality and not a detriment. So having two ponds adjacent to each other, may make things extra nice directly downstream from those ponds. So no concern there as far as ponds being close together. For the third comment, again about stormwater, there's going to be infiltration requirements to put the water, the stormwater, back into the ground to reestablish the groundwater table. There will be water quality requirements to clean the water, channel protection requirements to protect the channel downstream, and then attenuation requirements to protect things even further downstream. And so a number of best management practices to help ensure that everything is done properly and protect everything downstream in accordance with the Georgia Stormwater Management Manual. So no concerns there as far as stormwater. Everything will be in better condition than it is now. It's required to be improved upon, not just come close. So, did that answer any questions? Could I elaborate on anything else?
I just need to go look at the plot eventually and see what it is. Well, I can't see that.
Sure.
Can you describe the retaining wall that you're putting in the detention pond? Can you talk about the height of the wall?
I think it was about 5 feet.
It's already existing, right? You're not doing
No.
this?
No, the pond was never built.
No, there's a wall there, that's what it says, it's noted as existing.
Where do you see that?
Prior to, are you putting a wall, what's not clear is your easement here.
Right.
This-
It's a proposed wall. It's to be permitted by others. That's what it says. It's not existing at this time.
And this is from the pin that on our property, so you're not dropping this retention pond in our easement to get to our retention pond. Because based on what's on the description, it looks like you're dropping it right over our easement, which we would use to get to our retention pond.
Are you
So-
saying you have an easement on Mike's property?
No, we have an easement behind our property. My property pin is on the other end of that easement. All of our property pins extend over it, but I can't do anything with that 20-foot easement that is there for the county to get to our retention pond.
That would be on your property, so we're not touching anything on your property.
Just making sure, it's not clear on this description.
Oh, no, yeah.
Because you have here an easement that comes down and follows, which it looks like our existing easement, and then you have another easement down with the curve that comes into it. You have two easements going to your retention pond.
So all the,
I have
yeah.
3 easements behind my property now?
An easement is just a piece of land. It just gives the city the right to access it.
Well, I don't know what easement is, but I'm
Okay.
concerned about it being cleared out of trees because you're removing my buffer there from the roundabout. Because there are some giant trees that I would love to retain there. That's a lot of our concern is the buffering of trees, removal of trees
Yeah.
and.
Now, these proposed easements are just something that the engineering department with Milton asked me to draw in there to show that we're going to provide you that easement. I don't think you have any easements on Mike's property now.
No.
So he's
Yeah.
going to be
No,
giving,
I know. It's right, that's what I'm saying, it's right
yeah,
behind mine. Yeah.
he's providing easements so that your water has a path to get back to that stream.
So
So
let-
he's
yeah.
providing that you don't have right now.
So let me explain something. So I think what you're saying, you think you're, the area, the first 20 feet that's adjacent to the rear of the subdivision, so that will stay and remain the same because it's meeting the requirement that all lots have to have frontage on a street. So even a detention pond lot has to have frontage. So that's a line in a pretend line. So they don't need to touch that 20 feet adjacent to the subdivision. But you do see the 20-foot pond access easement that's 20 feet away from the Hawthorne subdivision line. So at least 20 feet will be, I don't know what the grading will be like, but it appears it could be preserved, that first 20 feet west of your property line of the subdivision. And then the next 20 feet is the access easement that gets to the actual pond.
Which is where they're going to have the clearing.
Eventually, right. But it won't be a total of 40 feet. It'll just be 20 feet, but 20 feet away west of the Hawthorne subdivision line.
Yeah, that's the reason for the board asked the question about the wall. The wall can be placed in certain parts of that pond as it's adjacent to our property. Our preference is that wall is placed further into the pond, so our lot, his backyard is not staring at a wall. We want to make sure that if you can get any grade from that property line down to that pond, then run a cut wall and then do your detention pond, that'd be the preference. That way we can get some buffer, some trees.
That's exactly the way it would be configured. The wall it's a tiered system with trees on both sides of the wall.
Okay.
And the wall is a cut wall, like you said.
Yep.
So it's down. You'll never see it. You'll just see ground and trees, and then the wall will be below ground from your vantage point. It'll be above ground if you were standing at the bottom of the pond looking at it, but from the east looking towards the west.
So can you move that all the way to the inside of that 20 foot for them?
I'm happy
Right
to.
now it's kind of shown jagged through the middle. Can you push it over so that they have that 20 foot clear?
When we went through permitting before, it was required that we have it in the middle with landscape on either side. So if staff during the review allows us to put it closer to the center, I'm happy to do that. But I don't want to agree to something now and then get forced to do something else and have to come back here.
It's just a question.
So this is a preliminary plat, and so obviously if we'll look at that, and Tracy's making notes so that when we receive the LDP plans, we'll make sure that we look at that to try to satisfy the community if it's engineering wise possible to do that.
Yeah.
So we hear you. Yeah.
Sounds good.
And it's a dry retention pond, so it should not designed to hold water. And obviously you say it's not a concern, but the homeowner that's there, he's got one on his other side, and then is there?
Yeah, this is a dry pond. It has to be more than 10 acres in Georgia to be a wet pond now with the new requirement, so it'll have to drain out completely.
Okay.
Correct.
Fair enough.
Okay.
So 150 feet, you said, for buffer?
Roughly from the property line to the houses. I just scaled it off when I was sitting there.
Okay, so you basically won't touch those trees there, so that's forest and shit.
I mean, the pond will all be graded out and then planted back. In the area of the stream buffer, those won't be touched.
Right.
And those easements north of the pond that are in the stream buffer, those are not going to be touched either.
So I want to just clarify, when people talk about buffer, and obviously the stream buffer is a great, that's going to remain the same, and that's very straightforward. I think the southern portion, where we have the access, it's that first 20 feet, I don't know if y'all be grading in that area, but we do not require any tree buffers between single family and single family. So depending on how it's all designed and or graded, let's say you grade some in there to go back, I can't make you replant that area. You may need to because of recompense or meeting some tree requirements. I don't know. I just want the community to understand we do not require visual screen buffer between, that's not a stream buffer. We don't require a buffer, visual buffer between single family and single family.
And I get it, because there's not trees there, so I'm taking upon myself to build my own.
Right, okay, right.
So I just need to know where I need to plant more trees.
Okay.
So,
That's fine. I just want to make sure everybody understood that.
Yeah, understanding that this is a plat hearing and certainly give the reason for that. When the plans go back through and there's a landscape plan, a grading plan, a hydraulic plan, will the neighborhood be able to get to review that?
So yeah, you can contact me, Robin McDonald, the zoning manager, or Tracy Wilds, and we'll be happy to share the information. I can't, you'll have to do the initiation with us.
Sure.
'Cause I can't.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And one other thing I'll mention that may be of benefit or desire, currently we have the access to the pond. It starts off of New Providence Road, roughly 80 feet from that property pin. And there's an existing concrete curb cut there. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. And so it was situated and started there and goes down to the pond. So it's located away from the property line.
Right.
The engineering department has asked us to move that all the way over to the property line, and I didn't want to do that because there was another tree near the property line, and we were trying to stay away from that. So far, my request has come on deaf ears. If it is beneficial to this commission and to the people here that you would prefer to have that access further away from the property line, that
So
would
you're
be-
speaking that connects the stem flag to the pond?
That's correct.
It's just there on drawings. I mean, if you're going to have your access easement on that dotted 20-foot easement area, there's
From
no
that.
reason to move it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a line on a plan. Your actual access will be further to the west.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds
You're
good.
saying that because there's a giant, there's like a 30-inch oak there, is that what you're talking about, to avoid taking that tree down? You can move it?
According to the survey, it's a 27-inch pine, 26-inch pine. And so if you're thinking about an oak, that's probably further away to the point that it didn't make it onto this.
It's like right, it's right on my pin, like just west of my pin. And I don't see it noted on your.
Oh, it's right here.
It might be that one that's cleared out there.
Probably so.
Is it right
That could be
there?
it.
There's
It
like
kind of
a,
split, so I don't know if you've drawn.
right
the
here.
tree or-
So you're lot 11?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, there's a very faint tree save area, or not tree save, but an indication of a,
Yeah, and that access was just outside of that.
and it won't touch it. So that's what I'm saying, that that's just a line that's drawn on the plan, and that they have the access further to the west to avoid that pine.
So you would just keep that existing driveway proposed?
Correct. That was the plan.
You don't even know how you get down there? I mean,
Yeah, it would just be grass and after that, and
Okay.
I mean, usually you never need to use those, but
Right, yeah, I haven't used ours yet, so I think you guys just cleared it out, or somebody did.
yeah, I don't know if what or if anything's been done in the last couple of years.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Any
for
more
Dave?
questions from the Planning Commission?
Fred?
Question for you, Robin. Is it possible in the future to have a plan large enough that we can understand it and see? Because it's been very difficult. We discussed it earlier.
Sure.
Of a plan this
I
size.
apologize.
Because it's very, I'm old, but it's very hard to make a decision on some of these things because we can't even read. I can't. I don't know about the rest of the commission.
Magnifying glass, Fred, so I hear you.
Got it.
Pretty small.
I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
How do you access lot 13805?
Commissioner Jacobus, can you say that again? I didn't hear you.
I'm trying to figure out how he's going to access lot 13805.
It's at the end of this private driveway.
Why does the driveway stop sooner? Is that just a drawing error?
Well, the private driveway would pick up from there. The builder would pick it up and take it wherever he wants to pick it up to. So the access easement goes to the property line, and it's a stub. We wouldn't want to make a 45-degree angle stub. It would just look funny when the home was built.
Same
so we
with the
cut it
north
off.
end.
I'm sorry?
Same with the north end as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the builder, when they build the house, they connect to it, and they just carry on the driveway, and it gives them a little bit more maneuverability of, putting it where they want to put it.
So you have a sidewalk here. I see at the very top, there's a sidewalk, and it looks like it goes down. I think it goes down to the end of the drive. Do you see the sidewalk right up here?
The sidewalk is just at the end of those parking spaces to access the mail kiosk. So it's just for people getting out of the parking spaces to access the mail kiosk. So they're not stepping into grass or mud.
There's the sidewalk across the front of these houses.
No, sir. They're just private driveways.
Are there any sidewalks along Birmingham Road and Providence?
Yes.
Okay, so they'll be linking into the ones at the adjacent community
You have a sidewalk, right?
to the east.
Yeah, those are already.
Hawthorne has a
That's right.
sidewalk.
Okay,
Improvement.
good.
Yeah, it's the trail. It's what the state built for the roundabout area.
Okay,
It already exists. We're not going to make them take it out and redo it. It's
prudent.
So there is a sidewalk from Hawthorne but it stops where this property is.
It connects into the sidewalk that goes into
Triple Crown goes.
There's a property in front of
Is-
this.
There on the right-hand drive.
Sidewalk in front of
Is there one at Triple Crown as well?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Kind of hidden, but it's kind of off grade up just back there.
Yeah, I have a question. Is this a development, I guess it's CMZ, is the developer developing the lots and selling the lots off individually to different builders, or will you be building all the homes?
I think he may be building them. He's developed River's Edge, if you want to check that out on Nice Road.
Is he going to develop all 5 lots? Is he going to,
I believe so.
so he will build the houses as well as develop the land?
I believe so. He's building houses in River's Edge, so if you want to go check out that neighborhood.
Yeah, I'm aware of the neighborhood. Just to
Okay.
make sure if it went to different builders, that was going to be a hodgepodge of different houses. But it sounds like aesthetically, he might be building all 5 houses as well.
That's my understanding.
Other questions for David?
I guess I had one question, although timing is horrible, I think. Has the fire marshal looked at this as far as access to, you pointed out lot, was it 13805? I mean, is there a turnaround in there?
Yeah, there's a turnaround.
Going into...
Chief and I have had a couple conversations and traded some emails, but there's a turnaround for both the north and the south.
Okay.
The approved IBC Chapter 5 Appendix D turnaround.
That's what I was hoping for.
Yep.
No, that's good. And then the other thing is the tree canopy. It looks fairly heavily wooded right now. And does this fall under the new tree canopy, or where are we at staff on as far as the, is the new tree canopy applicable to this?
So based upon the submission of the preliminary plat, they have a choice of either doing the density-based or the canopy-based. So
Which was the requirement that was started 2 years ago?
I believe you were under the density-based.
Okay.
But just because it's density-based doesn't mean, I think it might behoove to look at both ways, because you may not have to do as much, because we'll just have to see. People assume that density-based is better, but that's not necessarily true, the fact. So you could
I know
switch.
it met the requirements from a few years ago, but we've done a few homes with the requirements that were enacted a couple years ago, I believe. And I believe it would meet that too. We haven't done those calculations because we haven't gotten back to the landscape plan again yet, but I believe it would meet both. I think it was way over when we did some density calculations initially, so they should be fine.
But legally, they have the option right now to choose either the density-based or the canopy, so.
Okay. And then the other thing is you've mentioned that the DOT is requiring you to plant trees from the roundabout?
No, the city was.
The city was? Okay.
But Mike didn't want to plant them because GDOT had just torn them all down.
Okay.
And he didn't feel like he should have to plant them back and didn't want to pay that money, so he just kind of
so are
got irritated and dug his heels in.
Have those trees gone away, or?
No, they were ripped out when the roundabout was put in. That slope that you see, that's when they took it all out. They got a slope easement on his property and then took them out.
Okay.
So I guess now he's come to the realization that he's going to have to put them back.
Okay.
So.
All right. Those were all the questions I had.
Anyone else?
So will you be able to see the retention pond from the street?
I don't think so. It's going to be significantly downhill.
Those buffers would
a few hundred feet back.
Protect it from being visible.
Yeah, it should.
Okay, and then right at the bottom there, that first lot, there's something that juts into the property. What is that?
That is, I guess, a piece of property that GDOT took when they put the culvert in for the road. And a lot of times they do that instead of getting an easement. They just do it with condemnation and then just take all the pieces they want. They took right of way along the frontage, so apparently they took that too when they put the culvert in. So there's a culvert that sticks out from the storm drainage from New Providence Road and then discharges onto this property.
Took a pretty good chunk out of that lot, huh?
Yeah. I have a project up in Forsyth County that's exactly that same way, and they're actually deeding it back to the property owner with an easement instead of, owning the property. So it's just the way that they did it sometimes, instead of getting an easement.
I drove by there multiple times. I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on there. I thought there were some electrical boxes or something going on.
Now there's a pipe down there, but it's a drop, so.
Just out of curiosity, when you're grading the site, is it going to be a cut fill where you're going to try to level it all off, or are you going to try to follow the grade of the land south side of it, it's actually really high up. And then as you work towards Triple Crown, the grade drops pretty significantly. Is the plan to just clear the trees and then have the houses on a different level, or are you guys going to try to grade it out or make it kind of all equal?
I believe most of the grading for the houses will be done when they're built. And so the grading for the initial plans will be essentially to put the road in, the pond in, and try to not touch anything else. And then, that way if the home builder, when they build the house, if they want to just put the house in there and leave all the trees around there, they can, design the grades to work in that manner. It's not like a Lennar subdivision where you just wipe everything flat and then come back and plant a couple trees.
That's the reason I'm asking.
Yeah, it wouldn't work for this price point.
Do you know if his intent is to, okay, that's good, thank you.
Mentioned price point, I'm sorry. I just glanced at the plat that Brad had. So the lots nearest Triple Crown, which would be, I guess, to the north.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm looking at it looks like the property line runs down the center of that access road that goes to the cemetery. Am I reading it correctly?
I don't know. Oh yeah, on the access that straddles the property line?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the existing property line, I believe.
Right here.
It's on this side. That's right, I couldn't figure out. Okay, that's fine. That's just our access road to the cemetery, but also the only way I get to my septic field. So,
Okay.
so if we have an issue there, I'd like.
Yeah, if you have an easement, then you'll always have the right to do that.
Good.
Yeah, he can't take away your easement.
Yeah, thank you.
Will they be entering onto Province Road or onto Birmingham Highway to leave that neighborhood? I'm assuming it's just one street, you're not all exiting 500 driveways coming out, right?
Right, there's one, there's like a frontage road or a driveway, so everything will go on to Birmingham Highway.
And they're going to either go left at that point or right?
They'll probably most have to go right, yes.
So no left turns. Where'd you go down between?
Yeah.
You might have to put a speed table in before they round it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll check with the transportation.
The GDOT was in, so
Yeah,
it meets GDOT requirements.
the GDOT would dictate that.
And you mentioned price point, do you have a range?
I don't know anything about it, but I know it's not going to be, something that's down, in Cobb County somewhere. It's going to be nice. I mean, go to River's Edge and look at the homes there, and that's the kind of stuff that Mike does.
All right, fine. Any other questions for David?
I have one more, I'm sorry about that. I did notice, so my understanding, I could be totally wrong, but I thought for a septic plot, you had to have 1.1 acres, am I
No.
mistaken?
It's exactly 43560 square feet, 1 acre.
1 acre.
1
So
acre.
didn't this say like 0.76 acres, or did I see that wrong?
They're all at least 1 acre.
That was the density.
That's a density, yeah.
Any other questions from the council, commission? Okay, David, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for your time.
Robin, given that this is a preliminary plat, is that something that we approve? I think there was a change in...
So usually, in the past, that the planning commission makes a
recommendation.
A recommendation, yes.
Okay, so, okay.
Yeah.
Favorable or
Yeah.
presumably, oh, right. Would someone like to make a motion?
Okay, I'll move, I move to recommend approval of the Providence Point subdivision, including 5 home sites on 6.55 acres.
Okay. Should we make it subject to engineering review because of the silting issues and so
I think-
forth?
Yeah, I just assumed that would,
Okay, subject to engineering review. which seemed to be an issue.
Subject to, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Engineering review for the
Okay.
detention pond, silting, et cetera.
Bert, could you add the fact of all the notes that were made by her, that those be passed along with the vote of approving?
Sure, to include what?
To include the recommendations that I think you were writing down, to look at the detention, the drainage, those.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Include the recommendations that's been.
That we discussed. Okay, including the recommendations that were discussed and agreed upon.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Is there any discussion amongst the council? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Unanimously approved. Thank you all very much for
Before
coming out
we get
this
to the
evening.
next item, I have Michelle McIntosh Ross waiting in the waiting room. She wanted just to, before we start on the text amendments, because I thought it might take a little bit, she just wanted to talk to y'all for a second. So,
right.
Anyway, what?
And thank you all for coming out this evening.
How do I unmute?
Thank you.
Okay, Michelle. Wait, I gotta unmute you.
Okay, yeah, I'm unmuted now.
Okay, you're on now. Okay, thanks.
Great. Is everyone ready? Or?
Yes.
Robin, were there any
What's
other
that?
yellow cards?
Yeah, you're ready.
Robin?
You're good.
Robin? Hey, Robin? Robin, were there any other yellow cards on that?
Was there any other public comment outside of the preliminary plat?
We will. There's Ms. Birds is here for the text amendment, but I just wanted. It's really short that Michelle wanted to speak.
Okay, that's fine. I just want
Yes.
to make sure we were fully concluded on the other last piece. Thank you.
Okay, Michelle, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Robin. And I could stick around also for afterwards, but I just wanted to come on to mention to you about the upcoming CPAC meeting, which will be on August 12th at 6 p.m. I know I sent that email yesterday. So as time goes on, I'll hear from you about your availability to attend that August 12th meeting. It'll be at City Hall. And as you know, it's a lot more members than you're used to. It's probably will be about 20 folks in the room. So I just wanted folks to be aware of that. And we're working out the room as far as spreading everything out. It'll also be available online, just like this is, where the consultants would be able to talk through the Zoom, as well as any public would be able to attend and participate through the Zoom meeting. So just wanted to let you know that I'm here and available for if you have any questions, because I know last month you might have had some questions for Robin. So I just wanted to be available. Any questions, or we can wait till whenever.
All right, any questions for Robin? Rather for Michelle, since we'll all be, we all have an invitation to on the 12th. Michelle, it doesn't seem like we have any questions, but it's the 12th. At what time?
It's at 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Yeah.
What are you serving?
Oh, well, we don't have a menu.
All right, fine. I think they'll still show up.
Oh, okay. Also, at that meeting, we're interested on figuring out what times you guys would want to meet, if 6 p.m. is good or something else, So it's kind of, the first meeting, and we want to sort of arrange how we want to proceed with
All right.
meetings. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Michelle.
Okay, you're welcome.
The question was, it'll be here at City Hall, correct, Michelle?
Yes, City Hall. Council
Okay.
chambers, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Thanks, CPAC.
Yeah, I feel like you're up in heaven somewhere. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and, so we have a series of text amendments, but I'm just going to do kind of an introductory overview of kind of what the goal of these multiple text amendments were. I know it seems like a lot, but I would describe it as if you think about a watch, an old-fashioned watch, where there's all gears and, there's gears and there's circles or wheels, and they all work together to produce a watch or tell time. And that's how I would describe all these different text amendments. They're different gears, wheels that kind of drive what the ultimate goal of this text amendments are. So with that said, what we're looking at is creating a new section to the seasonal business use. And this is under the zoning ordinance, and it's under administrative permits, meaning that this type of permit does not require to go before you and to city council. It is all done administratively within our Office of Community Development, as well as I have, when needed, the fire marshal to look at it, transportation to look at it. Not all administrative permits need that, but whoever other departments need to look at it, we do that. With that said, if you looked at RZ 20-12, which is the amendment that adds on the temporary consumer fireworks retail sales facilities, that's a real mouthful. So the goal was to be able to have more stringent permitting requirements for this administrative permit, because before it just fell under the general seasonal business use. And with that said, just in summary, the goal was to restrict the location that it's allowed to be at. And so under A, we have it in the Crabapple Form-Based Code and the Transect Zones T4 Open and T5, and Deerfield Form-Based Code Transect Zones T4, T4 Open, and T5. Now, you can notice that we don't have C1 here, which is kind of the old traditional commercial zoning district. And to be honest, there's not much of that left. We have some C1 up at Birmingham Crossroads where the Publix is. It's only on that corner, as well as, shouldn't say only, where 7 Acre Bar and Grill is. That other corner, the northwest, is zone C1. And the southeast corner, a very small portion of it is. The rest of it is MIX at the other two quadrants at southeast and southwest. We don't have C1 in Deerfield or here in Crabapple. So for the most part, if someone wants to do this type of temporary fireworks stand, those are the areas that it would need to happen. The next item is the permit shall not exceed 30 consecutive days for each use. Said permit must be posted on site. The hours of operation are 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then
excuse me, what page are you on of the?
I'm sorry, what?
What page are you
Page?
I'm sorry, it's RZ 20-12, which is page 2 of that actual. It's kind of in the middle, and I think I gave you dividers. So it's RZ 20-12.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
It's kind of in the middle. Oh, you got it? Okay, cool. Then it talks about, what needs to be submitted. And then it talks about the distance from a permanent business. So, for instance, it has to be more than 1,500 feet away from like a Target or a Walmart, but because they would be selling a permanent business or other vendor that sells it. Let's go on to the next page and number 13.
When are we going to make comments on this? When you're finished?
Yeah, I'm just trying to give an overview,
Okay.
and then
Okay.
yeah, and then we'll have comments.
Good. Okay.
So number 13, this is kind of where we added some regulations about the size. Needs to be no larger than 800 square feet, and I think that's consistent with what the state law says, and 15 feet in height. From the city perspective, we only wanted white or off-white in color, and then no lettering or graphics shall be allowed on the facility except for signage required by this ordinance or otherwise required by law. And then only one 24 square foot banner is permitted and has to be black, white, or off-white in color. And the retail display area shall contain such signage as may be required by law. And then lastly, that it shall conform with applicable state law, fire code, and building regulations. So with that said, that's the meat of it. And then the other items, the other text amendments are supporting what we're trying to accomplish. So with that said, if you have some general comments, again, Alex is here, our fire marshal, as well as Sam, who is from our city attorney's office. So, and then we do have one comment person. So if we want to, we can go ahead and have her make her comments, and then we can open it up for deliberation.
Hello, Judy Birds. I live at 1165 Bream Drive, along with my fireworks terrified rescue dog. And I did, in Milton, Georgia, I did attend the CZIM, and post that, continue to do investigation and sent a 13-page white paper to Ms. McDonald. And I appreciate that she incorporated many of my comments, but I think there's some additional things we can do to make sure this is as beneficial to Milton as possible. The first thing I think would behoove us and be in our interest is to line our definitions with that is used in state law. State law defines 3 types of places you can sell fireworks. One is a store, a Publix, which has less than 25% of its total sales in fireworks. And they spell out a store. The second they call a retail sales, retail consumer fireworks sales facility, but it's a facility. And they usually, from the definitions in the industry standards, are referring to a dedicated fireworks store that sits in a strip mall. They also define and have restrictions for a consumer fireworks retail sales stand. Those are typically plywood painted stands. I think Robin is trying to define that they be less than 800 square feet. That pop up and pop down. State law says they can't be a tent. State law says they can't be a trailer, but they're a plywood building that gets popped into typically a parking lot. There are state restrictions on those stands, however. I think one of the first things we should do is align our language with that of the state. So talk about a facility and talk about a stand, and make sure that we're in alignment so that it's clear that the restrictions we put in place still encompass the restrictions by Georgia. So if we call it a facility, but we mean a stand, and in the state law it's a stand, I think that could be confusing that those state laws still apply. So I would like to see us both define a consumer stand and a consumer facility. I personally would like to prohibit these stands in the city of Milton. I just don't think they're part of our character. I don't think they're what we want to promote as an equestrian rural community. And I would actually like us to see it prohibited in all places. I'd also like to see the fireworks facilities prohibited as well. I don't know, I tried to look at state law to see if that was possible. I didn't see any, it did say you could zone them. We've prohibited vape shops. I'd like us to prohibit fireworks facilities and fireworks stands, but especially fireworks stands. I'd also want to make sure that as we write this, that any of the state rules and regulations and restrictions as to who can operate these stands are clearly stated, are clearly incorporated, because there are restrictions on who can operate a stand as defined by Georgia. If you choose not to prohibit them or we find it's not possible by state law, make sure you don't ease any of the state regulations inadvertently. Make sure we keep those in place. Some of the statements about it can't be a trailer, which we repeated in ours, it can't be a tent, etc. Excuse me, I need water, but we're masking. If prohibition is not possible for the stands or the facilities, let's make that as tight, as narrow as possible.
Water?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm not going to take my mask off until you get back.
Okay.
I don't want to breathe on that. Let's make it as restricted as possible. So I would like us to, if we can't prohibit it or if you choose not to, let's keep the stands and the facilities in that deer field and crabapple T4, T5 zoning. Keep it very, very tight. Preferably, I think those stands are kind of an eyesore. I'd rather just not have them at all. One additional thing I'd like to see. One of the things in the state requirements is that a stand or facility operator has to post a sign. And that sign talks about some things, but the first line is, please check local ordinances regarding use of fireworks. If we're going to need to permit this, in other words, we allow a stand, I would like to see that they be required to actually state our city noise ordinance on fireworks as part of that requirement, rather than just see your local ordinance, like any of them are going to look it up. So those are just some of my suggestions. Rather not have them. If we have to, let's make it narrow. Let's make it consistent with the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin, at this point, who will be presenting? Will our attorney present at this point?
Yeah, so either,
Okay.
I don't know if
I can
Alex
address-
or the attorney would like to speak first.
I can address both comments for you. So the definition, there's no conflicting verbiage in the proposed text amendments that you've looked at tonight. The definition of a facility versus a stand is outlined in Fire Code NFPA 1124. A lot of state verbiage that you see will refer back to that defining code. So let me go ahead and give you those two definitions. So a consumer fireworks retail sales stand, which you did see a picture of that earlier, is typically a plywood structure, is a temporary or permanent building or structure that has a floor area not greater than 800 feet squared, other than tents, canopies, or membrane structures, that is used primarily for the retail display and sale of consumer fireworks to the public. Now let me read you the definition of a consumer fireworks retail sales facility. A consumer fireworks retail sales facility is a permanent or temporary building or structure, consumer fireworks retail stand, tent, canopy, or membrane structure that is used primarily for the retail display and sale of consumer fireworks to the public. So there's no discrepancy in the definition that's presented in the text amendments.
I guess my challenge was, is anybody on Zoom? My challenge is that Georgia Code in Section 2510 goes on to place specific restrictions on stands that don't apply to facilities. And that's why I felt we should be consistent so that it was clear that we were talking about a stand and those Georgia restrictions apply. We're calling it a facility, and it may not be clear in Georgia law that the stand, which they defined restrictions, would apply. That's why I just think we should, if we cleaned it up or defined both, that we would have less chance of people saying, well, you're calling my stand a facility, therefore all those stand regulations don't apply.
Yes.
Well, I'll let Mr. Van Valkenburg speak about it.
At this juncture, I think we should have the conversation amongst ourselves. We've had our opportunity for 10 minutes of comment from the opposition, and I think at this juncture, let's just segue into a conversation amongst ourselves with regard to the points that have been raised by Judy and also points that may come up in our own discussion. Now, I believe you were going to say a few words with regard to the one of the points that Judy made.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. In general, I think it would be a great thing if we could have our definition line up with the state statutory definition, but that is just not possible because the state definition of and I'm going to skip the first part, stand, includes a temporary or permanent building. Since this is focused on temporary structures only, we cannot have it literally the same as the state statute. And I don't really think the state statute is drafted as well as it could be. So for those two reasons, I have recommended that we not try to mimic the state statutory language, although certainly the idea of keeping it clear is a laudable one.
Are there other questions for either our fire representative or our attorney?
Oh, I guess what are we to start out with? I have several. What are we calling a membrane structure?
That's typically a
stand.
That's typically a tent, a harder version of a tent.
Oh, a tent.
It's typically a thicker tent material that you would see at larger venues. You may see it across the street at Milton's, where people may dine under it.
Right.
That's an example of a membrane structure.
Okay. So at no place in here, then, we're saying at this time, let me back up. We've got, in descriptions, we've got non-structural and structural definitions. And the structural is spelled out then under Section 64, called temporary consumer fireworks. And that's for structures. The non-structures definition is trailers towed by motor vehicles. And we have incorporated that, the way this lays out right now, under the heading of temporary consumer fireworks. And I think that section, vending, should be separated out and put a heading of non-structural, because this way, because it goes on to say that's not permitted.
Would the attorney care to respond to that?
I'm sorry, could you rephrase that in some way? I'm looking at the text. Are you saying that we should define, since we've defined temporary consumer fireworks retail sales facility to exclude those items, we shouldn't be mentioning them later?
No, they're in the
definitions section.
In the definitions, that covers the structural part, which I call the temporary consumer. But within that, we also have definition non-structural. So all I'm saying, if we're saying non-structural, we're not to have any because vending shall not be permitted from any vehicle. So I think that all I'm saying is that should be, I think, removed out of there and as a separate heading.
Where in the definition section are you finding the text vending shall not be permitted?
He's looking at page 33 of the, and I think, Fred, this is what you're saying, under temporary consumer fireworks retail sales facility, the last line, you state excluded from the definition is any non-structural consumer fireworks retail sales facility. So you're saying you would like to see that as a different definition?
Yeah, that it points out that it, is not permitted by having it separated.
So you're absolutely right. It should say that, and it will say that. We have a separate section, which unfortunately, due to advertising snafus, you can't consider tonight. But regardless, it's illegal under state law.
So the last page, the very last page of your packet, I included section 64-395, uses prohibited in all zoning districts. So this is something that Sam had requested that we have, but it was past the advertising time. So we're going to have to bring that portion of it back. Okay. But it says one of the items to be prohibited is non-structural consumer fireworks retail sales facility.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess from the standpoint of the representing a retailer, the no lettering or graphic shall be allowed on the facility except for signage required by the ordinance. Understand that. But then we go down and say only 1 square foot temporary banner is permitted. So
the temporary banner is separate. So what I was trying to indicate was that on the actual structure, they tend to be pretty gaudy and lots of graphics and lots of color. So that's what I'm speaking to about the graphics. But I mean, we're going to allow them a separate temporary banner.
Okay, so banner becomes the CVS,
they're advertising. It'd be the TNT fireworks or whatever.
The banner becomes that advertising. But on the windows and all that, there's none.
Right.
Okay.
Can we go back to the definition on page 23? I'm still a little confused on why we have to call it a facility. Why non-structural consumer fireworks retail sales facility/stand? I mean, to me, when you say the word facility, everybody goes to a building. They're not thinking of the stand. A stand.
And actually, I was thinking about proposing a change to that language that basically said, since we already have the definition of the word structure, which defines it as a building or whatever, that we could basically say this means a non-structure such as a trailer towed by motor vehicle, tent, da-da-da-da-da. So that way we know that we're not talking about structures, and this is something totally separate from a structure. But then obviously to your point, which is again what Ms. Birds was talking about, which was one point that I had, was figuring out if we should still have a definition of facility and the definition of stand as they've got by state law. Even if they're the same, but at least we're kind of mimicking that. But anyway, back to your point though, my suggestion would be to add in saying that this is a non-structure such as, because we've got structure defined in here. So then that way there's no confusion because a structure is a building. This would be saying this is a non-structure.
Okay. Your thoughts?
So I think there are 2 points there. One is, should we call it a stand? And the other is the non-structure thing. As to the stand, I'm not wedded to our language, and so I think it's a reasonable suggestion. I'd be happy to incorporate it. Again, my only concern is if we call it something that is similar to but not exactly the same as the state definition, that runs its own risk of confusion. But I'm cool with calling it a stand. It is sort of more apt in its description. And then I didn't totally understand the structure comment.
So basically, we have structure defined in here.
Yes.
So that would be page.
Non-structural on page.
Page 32.
Yeah, on RZ 20-10, page 32 of 36. So we have the word structure defined, and I think it would be more clarifying for the definition of non-structural consumer fireworks retail sales facility to basically add in that, my suggestion was to say means a non-structure such as a trailer towed by a motor vehicle or tent, canopy, or membrane structure in which consumer fireworks are offered for sale to the public.
And capitalize the word structure at the start of that?
Yeah, exactly. And then, I also kind of had the same question about membrane structure. Now I understand what it means, but I think we need to define membrane structure as well in here.
Right.
So that way people understand what that means.
Before agreeing to that comment, I just want to make sure that if we call it a non-structure, we're not excluding sort of everything.
We're not what?
We're not excluding everything, every potential.
No, on page 23, we describe non-structural consumer fireworks retail sales facility. Means a trailer towed by a motor vehicle or tent, canopy, or membrane structure in which consumer fireworks are offered. So that's what you want added.
Well, I want to add in the word non-structure, and then I was saying such as a trailer, whatever. But again, go ahead.
So a structure, as it's capitalized, defined, is anything that is built or occupies a location on the ground. So someone could argue, well, my tent occupies a location on the ground, and therefore it falls outside of the definition of non-structural.
But this is attached to the ground.
Or is attached to.
Mm-hmm. Location, which occupies a location on or is attached to the ground.
I've just got a quick question. Can we just not have fireworks like we don't have vape shops in the city of Milton? I guess I grew up in a city where you couldn't buy fireworks, so.
As of a few years ago, unfortunately, that's not an option.
You can't do
to us.
that. Okay. It just seems like that'd be a lot easier.
Believe me,
and then you go to Gwinnett County or whatever and buy fireworks.
Everybody would love that.
Everyone would have gone there.
Okay. All right. Well, that was all I was trying to.
Unfortunately, I've been sitting here since we became a city, and that was brought up about 3 to 4 years after we became a city. And we had about 20 to 30 people, as I recall, here to discuss that. And it was clearly made at that time that we didn't have a choice.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask that question. I hadn't read everything in there, whether that still stood.
And in fact, the law has been getting stricter over the few years. So, yeah.
Anyway, I get your point. So, I think there just needs to be a little bit more clarification in that definition so that, people understand that it is, you can't just have some sort of fixed structure there. I see that it says on or attached, so obviously the attached part would cover that, but then if it's on there, if somebody builds something, puts a little tent or whatever on there, are they going to say, well, that qualifies as a structure? So I think we need to add something else in this definition to just make sure that we clarify that point.
And I just want to make one quick comment about the taking the facility portion completely out of it. Facilities, and while these temporary stands do fall in that category of a facility, facilities have stricter requirements that are enforced that temporary stands may not. So if you take away the definition of a facility, you may lessen the fire code requirements that would normally be placed upon them, such as parking close to the structure with a vehicle. And that's just an example. I mean, I've got thousands of codes here. So
Can't you have facility / stand?
we have facilities defined and stands defined in the current text amendments, I believe. Correct?
No, just just facility.
Just facility.
Stand
And facility
Right,
encompass.
stand is not.
Stand is
I mean, I
not
think
a
we should
complete-
define stand.
Yes.
I think we should incorporate stand as well. And again, it could be the same, but at least we're aligned with the fact that there is a state definition for stand as well.
So is that in favor of facility / stand or just stand?
Facility is one, and then stand is a separate definition.
If we had two definitions, I don't know where we would use the one that we didn't incorporate further on into the ordinance, if that makes sense. So the basic structure of the ordinance is first we define these kind of temporary stands or facilities, and then we go on to talk about what they can and can't do. We don't need two definitions to describe that one thing. We just need one, and whether we call it a facility or a stand, I guess I'm agnostic.
Could we then just say, non-structural consumer fireworks retail sales facility, also known as a consumer fireworks retail sales stand?
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. Whatever is the least confusing to
No,
the
that way
layman.
we've got both words that are defined by the state in our one definition, but we've got them both in there. And that way we're mimicking that, and then we've covered both of them.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
So let me just clarify, because it's hard for me to hear. So what we're proposing is to have a separate definition for a temporary fireworks stand, just to have a definition so people know what it is?
I think it would be changing the definition of facility to say AKA temporary fireworks stand, right?
Yeah, so consumer fireworks retail sales facility, also known as a consumer fireworks retail sales stand.
That's in the physical definition in fire code. Maybe it's not in the text amendments. I don't
So what are you saying, Alex? It might be in conflict?
The definition of a retail sales facility includes that exact verbiage of a tent.
Is that when
or
you're
a,
talking
or
when
a
you say
sales
fire
stand?
code?
I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, when you say the fire code, are you talking about this NFPA 1124?
NFPA 1124. State law is a very small piece in this puzzle. Very small. This package here, which is printed double-sided, which has thousands of codes, deals with the sale of fireworks.
Got
it. To include these temporary stands. Again, let me read the definition of a consumer fireworks retail sales facility. A permanent or temporary building or structure, consumer firework retail stand, tent, canopy, or other membrane structure that is used primarily for the retail display and sale of consumer fireworks to the public.
So why aren't we using that?
Because it will never be permanent. And we do use...
why can't we use that definition right there instead of what we've got?
Can we also, and then also, can we even add that we reference the NFPA 1124 latest edition?
To me, that seems like the perfect definition right there.
Sure, but this is ever changing. Just like Ms. Berg referenced the signage. So that specific signage she referred to just came into play this year. So in years past it was different. So next year it may be different again. So we got state minimum fire safety standards 120-3-3. They put out a document that's adopted every so years. We just had a new one this year. It gives you codes for everything to do with fire and life safety in the state of Georgia, and it sends you different places for different things. So this year it sends you to 120-33-2, which I believe, which is the code for fireworks. And then it refers you to NFPA 1124. Then it refers you to that specific code edition, which is 2006. There's a lot of moving pieces, and that in coordination with state law. There's just so many moving pieces, and they always change. To hit on the sign piece that Ms. Burge said, I know she wants that particular sign on there, but if we adopt those words for that sign, and that's now required by city ordinance, and now fire code changes, so we got to have a different sign, we're going to end up with 10, 15, 20 signs before it's over with. I enforce what fire code and state law tells me to enforce.
Okay.
No, I mean, anyway, I mean, I think based on if that's what the definition is, then instead of we saying also known as, we can just incorporate that, after tent and whatever else. We've got consumer fireworks retail sales stand. Just like you read it off.
Just like what he read.
And make that as a part of our definition for consumer fireworks retail sales facility.
To include the NFPA definition of a stand?
Well, the stand is included in the definition of facility per them. Alex, why don't you mind? Do you mind reading it off
Would
again?
you mind reading it again so he can get it?
Yeah.
Sure.
I have the NFPA definition of facility.
A facility.
That's what you were proposing?
As an option to
include
clarify,
stand, right? Does it
to
include
clarify
stand in
the
there?
discrepancy.
It does. Okay. However, if we were to use that definition, we would have to change two things about it that would make it come right back to kind of what the definition we have right now. First, we'd have to remove the word permanent. Second, we'd have to remove the words tent, canopy, or membrane structure.
Now I'm confused.
It is so confusing, and trust me when I say that we've all collaborated on several different occasions to make sure that this was the best effort we could push forward to the group. I know it's confusing, and there's no way that it will be able to be comprehended in this meeting. I mean, it really takes a lot of time and a lot of research.
I think, from my perspective, I think the point we're just trying to make is that stand needs to be in there somewhere. That when you say facility, most people don't think stand. They don't think what we're talking about. They think of a permanent structure. And I think...
Well, yeah. I mean, I think, what we have is we have the current proposed definition calls it out very clearly what it is. I mean, that happens all the time in my world where people misunderstand what a word means, and I have to go to the definition section of the zoning ordinance and say X means blah, 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 and it becomes very clear. So, I mean, I'm not afraid of that, and right now we have one temporary stand that comes a year. Sometimes maybe in the way past it would come at New Year's, but typically I have one application for one temporary consumer fireworks retail sales facility. It is not a huge deal in the sense of trying to clarify what a definition is. And I would, also support Alex and that, there's been a lot of collaboration between his expertise and the city attorney's expertise and trying to make it as enforceable as possible in a situation that, to be honest, is used once or twice a year.
No, anyway, I mean, I think the problem for me is that I'm not sure what's our standard. Like, are we going by what you provided us from Westlaw and these are the state, or are we going by what NFPA is? It seems like it's contradictory a little bit. So I'm not sure what our standard is, so that way we know, hey, this is, in my mind, what I would like to kind of gear it towards our definition to be in line with something that's already out there. But we've got kind of like two conflicting ways of defining this.
Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, so I would love it if either the NFPA or the state statute defined it in a way that we could just take and use. But because both of those definitions, for one thing, use temporary or permanent, and our ordinance is directed at temporary, at least for the time being, we do need to make changes to those kind of stock definitions. There's just no way around that.
So, Sumit, what do you think is? Should we be sticking with the?
So, I mean, is your recommendation? Is there a way to incorporate stand into your recommended definition?
The literal word stand,
or calling it consumer fireworks retail sales stand?
I would be fine since it seems to be the sense of the board that stand is better from a layperson's perspective for understanding this, with just swapping out facility and putting in stand. Does that?
I'm good with that.
We don't need to literally incorporate the NFPA definition of stand.
Okay. And there's not going to be any other changes that we would need to make by taking out the word facility? I know Alex had brought up a point about, kind of enforceability on things for facility versus stand.
I do not think so, because the provisions I think Alex is talking about have to do with permanent facilities, right?
It actually references temporary facilities as well, but
would those not be applicable anyway? Even if we changed the word, but our definition stayed the same, they'd still be applicable, right?
To be honest with you, and this is just me being completely honest, however the ordinance reads, the ordinance is going to read. I'm going to continue, and I'm the only one that enforces this. I'm going to continue to enforce NFPA fire code and Georgia law. And it sounds like this is more restrictive than the ordinance. I don't have an issue with the definition. I understand the definition, so I'm going to continue to enforce what the definition states and what the fire code has. So write it as you may and as you may. I have to do what this says, and I have to do what Georgia law says. So.
Okay.
And that's an important point. Regardless of how we define our ordinance, the NFPA says what it says, and we incorporate that as a standard.
Right.
Okay. All right. I think can we draw that to a close now? Have we decided what you know what you're going to do, how you're going to redraft at this point?
So let me just state it,
Please.
so that we're all on the same page. So I have. Let me start from the first definition. With respect to the definition of non-structural consumer fireworks retail sales facility, there was a request that we make an attempt to define the word membrane. So we would, in that definition, make no change other than to try to, as a parenthetical, define what a membrane means. With respect to something we haven't even talked about, roadside vending, we won't touch that. And with respect to definition of temporary consumer fireworks retail sales facility, we will leave that definition the same, but we will change the word facility in the name to stand.
Okay. So for you?
And then are we also going to change that in non-structural as well? The non-structural consumer fireworks?
Oh, did I skip over that? I'm sorry. Yes, sorry about that. Let's see. Yes. Yeah, we can do that.
So we're going to change, propose to change non-structural consumer fireworks retail sales stand.
Right.
Okay.
Now, with that having been restated, does that give the fire department any issues? Just one more time on that. Are you good with that, what was just restated?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then one more thing, Sam, in that definition where we got non-structural consumer fireworks retail sales facility, and then we say the word means, is it okay to use the word means, or should we say such as? So that way we're not just tying it up to just those few things, or does it matter?
The specific purpose of having this definition was to capture the enumerated items that are in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I would prefer to just say means.
Okay. Because membrane is going to be, you'll have a definition for membrane that will kind of encompass some more things as to what membrane would mean. I just want to make sure we've, covered it all in there so that somebody doesn't come by and say, hey, this is not considered one of these items that we say when it says means.
Actually, if they were to make that argument, they would be restricting themselves, because this is an exception to temporary fireworks retail stand. So the smaller this definition, the stronger our ordinance is.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, we will definitely define membrane to kind of capture what that means.
And then I assume if we're changing the name to stand versus facility, like under the roadside vending, we'll follow that through in the document?
Yes, everywhere. Yeah.
Okay, just want to be clear.
Fred?
I think you made it clear, or it wouldn't be in here, but from the state standpoint of what we can and can't do, are we okay by saying we shall not permit the sale of fireworks from any trailer, motor vehicle, canopy, and main membrane structure? We're okay by?
Yes, that's basically verbatim of what state law says.
Okay.
And then for the temporary consumer fireworks retail sales facility, we can leave it, the second sentence is excluded from, but then can we capitalize the word non-structural, or so that way we're
What
showing
page
that
are
there's a
you on?
defined word
Which one?
for temporary consumer fireworks retail sales.
The definition.
The second sentence in that definition, where it says excluded from this definition is any, and then, non-structural would be capitalized to match the defined term.
Well, I'm with you in principle. I'm just not sure that we use capitalization throughout the ordinance. But if it does need to, if that's what we do, then that will be capitalized.
Good? Yeah. Okay. Question on the standard employed here concerning the temporary consumer fireworks retail sales facility being located within 300 feet of nursing homes and hospitals, etc. Are you on the page?
Page are you on?
That's RZ 20-12, page 3 of 3.
3 of 3.
It's number 12.
Yeah. So we're on RZ 20-12.
That's right. And it's point number 12, 12 in a hole. So are you with me?
Yes.
Okay. When I looked at the state statute, it included only nursing homes and hospitals, and then it called out, in addition, other health care facilities. Was there a reason that you excluded other health care facilities?
The short answer is no. That may have just been an oversight. Do you happen to recall what statute?
In the state code?
Right.
I have it right here. A second. Okay, yes, in the, let's see, which section is this? This is section 25-10-2, page 2 in the Westlaw document. And it is little Roman numeral 7.
So if you follow that Roman numeral 7 up, do you get to capital C?
Yes.
So that capital C refers to igniting fireworks, but not sales of fireworks.
Okay. Then is there a separate thing in here on sales? I thought I saw one on sales. Maybe I just
Sales
picked
in
the
that
wrong
same
one.
section is addressed at on the first page at lowercase a and b, and then also in that section at B5 and 6, which are on page 3 and 4.
So there's no such constraint there then?
That's correct.
Okay. But you've imposed one.
Yes.
Why can't we go further and include the other healthcare facilities?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Following that further, could we include equestrian facilities, active farms, or veterinary facilities? Because the notion here is that we want to, I believe the notion that you're putting forward here is that we want to restrict the area, presumably because if something, because of loud explosions or whatever. Is that correct?
Well, this is the sales, it's not the actual.
So you're touching on a delicate subject because in our zoning, we don't want to give the impression that we're trying to prohibit the use of fireworks. We're trying to zone it more from a aesthetic standpoint.
That's right.
So while the specific amendments that you suggested, I think we can do. I don't want to say that it's all about.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
I understand.
Yeah, but isn't part of it also the fact that if something did happen, so say for example, it exploded, wouldn't you want to make sure that you weren't close to an aquarium farm, places that would cause more issues than if it happened in the middle of a parking lot close to just office buildings?
Definitely, and I think we have like a distance to a fire hydrant for that reason. In consultation with the city attorney, we didn't want to lean too heavily on that safety issue, though. It's a consideration, but we didn't want to make it a prime consideration, if that helps at all.
Okay.
So I think too, if you look at where the locations that are allowed, these facilities are permitted in the form-based code and T4 open or T5, and you look at it, I think most of those uses wouldn't be anywhere near it anyway.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like, in fact, we don't have to worry about out at Birmingham because we're not going to allow it in C1. So that's probably the most likely area that you might have a horse farm, or you might have a vet clinic that's on almost every corner up there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're taking care of it, maybe unintentionally, by the zoning districts that they're permitted in. So, yeah.
But there is one about, I don't know, quarter mile away from the facility we have today, a vet facility.
Right, at Bethany Bend, or, yeah. I mean, it is what we can do.
And we don't know where they're going to pop up at other points in time as well. So if you're okay with those additions?
Yes, and if you could please restate them in just a sec so I can write them down.
Certainly. They were other healthcare facility. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
You're not ready.
We are at section 12.
Yes, section Z20-12.
Okay, so nursing home, hospital, other healthcare facility?
That's right. And then the equestrian facility, farm, active farm, and veterinary facility.
So Sam, I thought you were saying previously that we didn't want to limit to that extent as far as the equestrian facility, active farms, and...
Well, given that we do have nursing homes and hospitals in here, I think it's sort of a natural extension that we do that.
To do healthcare facilities, correct?
Yeah.
In all of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like aesthetically a patient is going to, decompensate by seeing a fireworks stand. It really is more of a, what if, the thought of fireworks or the exploding or the potential for it exploding just totally, causes havoc.
Okay.
On a separate issue, we have a noise standards are here in the city, and do these facilities sell fireworks that, if ignited within the city limits of Milton, would violate our noise ordinance?
So the noise ordinance makes an exception to fireworks being exploded during certain times, that it is permitted in the noise ordinance. So if you give me a second, I can find the reference to it.
Okay.
While she's looking it up, the noise ordinance that we have includes fireworks. It's not like fireworks are excluded from our noise ordinance, but it can't target fireworks specifically. So I'm sure at noon on the 4th of July, the decibel level is some really, really high number. And at 2 in the morning on a weekday, it's a very low number. So someone could violate the ordinance by exploding one of these fireworks at 2 in the morning, but not necessarily at noon on the 4th of July. I would strongly doubt that they sell a firework that, if exploded on the 4th of July, would violate our noise ordinance. But I don't know that.
Okay. When was the last time we reviewed our noise ordinance? I know we had some discussion about its applicability last year.
I'm sorry.
When did we redo the noise ordinance?
It's been it was in 2017. It was adopted 9/13/2017, and then it looked like there was a smaller change in 18, the 18 was the fireworks section. So I'm going to read it out right now.
Okay, please.
Okay, and this is out of Chapter 20, which is not a code that has the purview of the Planning Commission. So it was looked at the council. So it says...
Thanks for sharing.
Section 20-657, loud, disturbing noises prohibited generally. A, it shall be unlawful for any person to create or assist in creating any loud and unreasonable noise in the city. B, the general prohibition in paragraph A includes the use of consumer fireworks that create loud and unreasonable noise except during the following dates and times: after the time of 10 a.m. and up to and including the time of 11:59 p.m. on January 1st, the last Saturday and Sunday in May, July 3rd, July 4th, the first Monday in September, and December 31st of each year, and beginning at the time of 12 midnight and up to and including the ending time of 1 a.m. on January 1 of each year.
Okay.
So that's when it's, hey, go for it, right?
Okay. Thank you. One other question. How do we regulate pop-up stores? So this is sort of a pop-up notion that we have. It happens to be a plywood structure. But if the CVS store at Windward, the Rite Aid store at Windward, which is vacant right now, if someone did a pop-up store in there, is that permissible?
So, yeah, go ahead. You can do.
No, it's not permissible. I can't say that because that's Alpharetta's parking lot, but.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
That's the wrong one.
But if you were to give me an example of a Milton parking lot, no, it would not be permissible.
Like Walmart, maybe.
And it would be subject to permitting. It would be subject to licensing with Fulton County Probate Court, and it'd be subject to my inspection.
Okay.
If that, I think I know where you're going. If that property was in Milton at Rite Aid, could like you see the Halloween costume stores that go
Sure.
in and they do it for 30 or 45 days, could they go into that Rite Aid? Is that what you were asking?
That's where I'm going.
Into the Rite Aid, not in the parking lot, but make it a fireworks shop.
Oh, and that's happened before.
Inside of a structure?
Yeah,
inside of a structure.
That Rite Aid, if that was City of Milton, say that was over where the bank is, in front of Kroger, and it was vacant, and somebody
That's
decided.
Alpharetta
Yeah, that's Alpharetta too.
Oh, that's Alpharetta too.
But I mean, I get what you're saying.
Well, we know what you mean.
I'm gonna put 15,000 square feet of fireworks in there and make it, buy two get one free type thing that you see again over in Gwinnett County all over the place. Could they do that with our code in Milton?
So we
I
do,
think, I think that crosses.
Doesn't the 800 square feet?
That's
Come into play.
going to cross a threshold of different fire codes, which is uses of structures. There's for example, that's a business use where selling fireworks is a mercantile use. So in that case, no, they would not be able to do that.
Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, I wanted to be sure that we had contemplated the possibility of the Halloween store, costume store scenario, so that to the extent, I don't want to fall through the cracks, in other words. We're contemplating here these specific structures. I believe elsewhere we talk about more permanent structures. But this sort of is one of those things that I felt was in the gray area.
Sure, okay. Every firework that you're seeing in these firework stands or firework facilities or whatever you want to call them, those same fireworks are able to be purchased within stores, within structures like he described. There's nothing in the stand or the store that varies.
So like in a Walmart, they could.
Walmart's carrying a lot of the same, unless they have an internal store policy, a lot of the same fireworks that these stands are carrying.
Okay.
And getting, I just wanted to make it known, getting back to that definition piece, there are less stringent requirements if we call this a stand instead of a facility. The facility is outlined very clearly to include stands. Maybe temporary facility would be a good compromise.
Well, I mean, when you enforce NFPA,
I'm sorry to interrupt. This is my worry. I don't want somebody to set up a fireworks stand and have these new text amendments and new ordinances in their hand, and I tell them, you cannot have parking this close to this temporary fireworks facility. And he says, no, this is a stand. According to firework and according to NFPA, a stand doesn't have parking requirements. It doesn't refer to distances from portable generators, but facilities do. And I mentioned that earlier, and I can give you some more examples.
And when you do your inspections, as you're required to in here, those are some of the things on your checklist, I guess.
There's 1,000 things in here, and there's no giant checklist for this. No, there's fire and life safety, and I ensure that it's met. But I obviously can't go through this whole document or make a checklist off of that.
Yeah.
I know what's priority. I know what has to happen, and a lot of that comes from experience. There's a letter of the law, and then there's a practical piece to the law.
Sumit and everyone else, I'm a little concerned that we may be going down a path here that might not allow us to enforce. Because
I'm just saying we will make it less stringent by ordinance, and there could be a conflict down the road. That's all, unless you see it another way.
Well, my approach to this is that when you enforce the NFPA, the first thing you do is you pull up the definition section. If they say, no, don't worry about that definition section, the city ordinance defines this for ordinance purposes a different way, you just say, no,
right.
That's the city ordinance definition for its own purpose. This is the NFPA definition for my purpose.
Sure.
And you're gold.
Sure, but I know. I enforce ordinance as well, not only as the fire marshal, but also as a police officer, sworn police officer with the state of Georgia. I don't see an issue with what we have drafted so far. That's all I'm saying. To me, it's clear. I know to the general public it's not, but in this equation, there's the guy who obtains the license from Fulton County. The license says facility on it. It doesn't say stand, because they're going through an actual brick and mortar store to get that license. They've got to meet specific requirements. The license that I get from them that I have to see says facility. It doesn't say stand, it says facility. You're licensed by Fulton County as a facility. There's just discrepancies, in my opinion, if we start changing verbiage.
I think it's a practical question he's raising.
As the guy who enforces, as the only guy that enforces this and the ordinance against one vendor yearly.
So, Alex, from my memory, is the only time that the facility comes is 4th of July. They don't even really come at New Year's or anything, correct?
Since I've been in
at least the recent past.
Yeah, since I've been in the fire marshal's office for 6 years or so, it's been one vendor annually.
So, Ron, are we making this a bigger deal than we need to?
We may be.
Because I have a hard time questioning anybody that can reference that many fire codes, because the knowledge is way up here.
Yeah.
So,
And rest assured, I do not give anybody permission to open their store until they have met these applicable codes. But with that said, there's the law, and then there's the practical piece of it. For example, if a police officer pulls you over for speeding tonight, yeah, there's a no speeding law, but he has the option to give you a warning. For this recent temporary stand, for example, yes, there is now new law that says you have to have 3 or 4 signs that say specific verbiage. That just changed this year, really just months ago. Does he have time to draft all these in the correct font and the correct dimensions and have this up and get ready to sell fireworks this year? Probably not. So a lot of that is education. Hey, sir, Georgia law changed. This is what needs to happen going forward. I know it's a lot, but make sure this happens again. Make sure this gets in place next year. It doesn't harm anybody at that time. It's not an immediate fire or life safety threat. It's just there needs to be verbiage next year that says we have city ordinances about fireworks. That's all.
So I think we got a practical issue.
Yeah, no. I mean, again, I'll defer to the city attorney, obviously, but again, and this is why we're bringing it up. I think Jan was the same as I, is just trying to incorporate both, because it's hard to know what we would potentially want to align ourselves with, because again, definitions for the state have a separate definition for stand. You're saying that in the NFPA, facility incorporates stand in that definition itself. So, I want to incorporate both. I mean, I want it to somehow be both of them, so that way there is no discrepancy between it. But, you let us know the way that we can incorporate both. I mean, that's our objective. It seems like that's our intent. We've got 2 different ways of defining this in 2 different, codes, I guess. So we're just trying to understand the best way that we can incorporate both of them.
to me, it's really not a question of what the definition is. It's what we're calling it. And I think that's partly, at least Alex's point, is even if the definition is correct, if we call it a stand, people are just going to be, they're going to push back on him.
Only because it's happened before in different instances, that's all. We have collectively worked together and drafted text amendments that make sense to both of us from a legal perspective and from the practical enforcement perspective.
I mean, I'm personally fine if we call it facility, but can we call it facility but incorporate stand or retail sales stand or something like that in that definition?
But again, we don't need to change the definition. We just need to, it's the wording that he's concerned about, because that's what people are going to be confused by. Is this the name? Mm-hmm. I guess I resisted it at first as being confusing, but maybe facility/stand is the best way to go. Do you think that you don't like that?
Well, I mean, again, I go back to there's one vendor that comes every year, and I believe that they're very attuned to what the ordinance is and the NFPA. I mean, that's their business, and so they know what it is. I mean, it's not something that we have confusion over. I mean, it's just. Yeah, I could probably give you 3 or 4 other examples of confusing terminology in the zoning ordinance that I have to explain to people time and time again. I mean, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. That's just the way it is. So I personally think that we're kind of, concentrating on one thing that is not really an issue. I mean, I don't have citizens come, other than Mrs. Burt. I don't have everybody lining up on my telephone asking me, well, what's the difference? What's a facility? The only people that apply it are the vendors that try to apply for it.
If you look at it, if at the end of the day, the fire marshal says, if we change it the other way around, we're liable to create more problems, then we should stay away from it.
Okay. I see a consensus developing here to take it back to...
Personally, I think the word stand just better defines what we're talking about. But if under the law, that makes it more difficult for you to do the job and do it the way the intent is, then we should stay away from it. I mean, mine was just to make it easily for a layperson to understand. But if that deters us from doing what we really want to do, then stay away from it.
I sense that there's a consensus building here that we go back to the original language. So sorry for the detour. We were trying to make it more user-friendly, but what we ultimately want to do is make sure you can enforce the code and the laws of the city. So I think we'll defer to the practical and go back to where we started. Okay?
Got it.
Unless anyone around the table feels differently.
Fine.
Okay.
It's the enforceability that's the key, I believe.
Absolutely.
So.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Because I can just quickly go through each text amendment and cover what the proposed changes are or suggestions. And then I know there's some of them we haven't even touched, but I'd like to go ahead and explain them.
That'd be fine.
How they
Please
work
carry on.
through.
Well, I did have one more question, and you may be addressing this too, Robin, but I just wanted to also make sure that we had talked about when we say seasonal business use.
Okay.
Is it defined anywhere? Again, we're talking about fireworks. So do we have it defined anywhere where we're considering fireworks sales to be, during these quote-unquote seasons? I know you just rattled off some different dates. We've got January, you've got May, you've got July, you've got September, you've got December. So what are we considering?
So it is defined.
Okay.
It says seasonal business use means a primary use. It's on page 29 of the big section of the definitions. Use means a primary use involving the sale of items related to calendar holidays such as Christmas trees, Halloween pumpkins, etc., which may be conducted outside. So it's on page 29.
Right. So, what you had just stated in terms of what the exclusion is based on the noise ordinance is this could happen during New Year's Eve, in May, in
July.
September, in July,
Yeah.
December. I'm not sure if, again, I would want us to maybe keep it, restricted to those time periods. So it's the 30 days before New Year's Eve. It's the 30 days before, if we're talking about this being a 30-day kind of a permit, hypothetically, for some of these, how do we make sure that we incorporate that? Because I don't know if seasonal business use really lets us know when we're considering the times that they are to, sell fireworks.
So I believe, and maybe Sam can correct me, but this is a subsection of it, and it's almost like it's a separate section. So it's like seasonal use is A, and temporary consumer fireworks is B, and that's exactly why we separated it out. So I think it doesn't relate directly, the fireworks stand.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, and also related to that, the permit's good for 30 days for each use. Is there anything that prevents somebody from getting 12 30-day permits and open all year?
Having a permit all year?
Yeah, it says they're good for 30 days for each use. Could I come in and say, I'm doing this for 4th of July, so I get this 30 days. I'm doing this for another use. Is there anything to limit?
Yeah, so it doesn't appear that there's, so for instance, we have an administrative permit for special event permit, and we only allow 2 per year. So that possibly could be, although it's kind of hard, we do it per location or per property. So I think it would be hard to, what if they moved it from the CVS to in front of the Walmart? I don't, it would be kind of hard to define or to regulate.
Right. With respect to that weird situation where they're hopping in the same area but different parking lots, we might, I don't know, that might just be a loophole that someone could take advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a way to close that loophole, I'm totally open to it. I'm just not sure what it is.
But if someone were in the same place and just reapplying for a permit, then they would not be a temporary facility, and we'd say,
Okay. All right.
Good point. So the calendar holidays, like in the definition of calendar holidays, again, I'm just trying to figure out a way, so that somebody doesn't have that situation where they're going to have a firework location all year long, because they're basically saying, okay, well, different calendars and different dates and different whatever. So is there anything that we need to do to address that, or do you guys feel like?
well, to reiterate, fireworks stands are separate and not overlapping with seasonal business stands.
Okay.
So anything in that definition of seasonal stand referencing a holiday will not apply to fireworks.
Will not apply to fireworks?
Correct.
So any other questions before we continue?
Carry on.
Well, with regard to number 10 here, how many telephone booths do we have in Milton?
Number 10? I know, that is kind of funny. I know. We don't have any telephone booths.
Okay.
And we're getting kind of rare on the mailboxes too. I mean, Lily's US, we have one out here now, but fire alarm, traffic control, driveway access, yeah. Okay. Okay, so the first item is RZ 2010, which is the large section of the definitions, the general zoning section. So let's just make sure I think we've discussed it, but I want to just double iterate what you all are requesting or recommending. So actually we might be going in reverse. So page 23, originally you had suggested to substitute facility with stand, but I think I'm getting the feeling that you're okay now with just leaving it the way it is.
Leave it the way it is.
Okay. But at the same time, you mentioned that you wanted to have a definition of membrane, and that's still correct,
That's
right?
Right.
Okay. And then,
33.
yeah, page 33, that temporary consumer fireworks retail sales facility, we're going to keep the same. And was there anything else that that I didn't catch on that, or just keep that way?
We were going to capitalize the word non-structural if capitalization is consistent with the ordinance.
So we will or won't?
I have to see.
Okay. So typically when things get codified in Municode, they don't capitalize, just FYI.
So that's probably where we're going.
Right, yeah. So that remains the same. And then if we go over, let's see, I think that's it for the definitions. Have I captured everybody's thoughts on the RZ 2010? Okay.
Want to vote on these each time?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and vote on that, and then we'll go to the next one. Well, let's do this, just in case something comes up. Let me just go through the rest of them. And I know it's a little bit laborious, but I don't want to have to undo something if we vote on it. Okay, so the next one is RZ 2011, and this is the C1 Community Zoning District. And if you go to page 2 of that of RZ 2011, under MM, retail store or shop not to include roadside vending, comma, seasonal business uses, or temporary consumer fireworks retail sales facilities. So that's what that proposal is. So that's for C1, that we don't allow it. Okay, so the next text amendment will be ours. Yeah?
On that, and Fire Marshal mentioned it about the parking, that minimum of 6 parking spaces, understand it, but if they're in a i.e. shopping center that also has other fireworks and that, are they restricted? I mean, how do you define or would define that they have to have a minimum of 6 spaces for any, and can't use any other use on the site?
So we've skipped back over to the other section.
Huh?
So you're back on the other.
Are you asking how are they going to display that?
Yes.
That when they submit for their permit, they submit a site plan to Robin, and that's new. Is a text amendment that's new that will include parking provisions.
Right, we get a site plan and they show their proposed parking.
Okay. So.
Which is new.
Temporary, if they were in a shopping center and they have 6 places in front of this building that went out of business and they're in there. If they have 6 places in front, that counts?
Yes. I mean, I don't make them do separate parking spaces, but if you can utilize an existing parking lot, hey, go for it.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I want to make sure that's.
Yeah.
No
Okay.
problem. Okay.
Okay. So the next one is RZ 2012. And that is the section, I think that on page 2 is the majority of 2 and 3. So we're keeping everything the same on page 2, but on page 3, under 12, we're adding after hospital, other healthcare facilities, and then at the end of the sentence, after dwelling, comma, equestrian facility, comma, active farms, and veterinary facilities or clinics.
That's right.
So, okay. Now, we're on RZ 2013, which is crabapple form-based code. And there were some changes, but there were some late-breaking discussions this afternoon as it relates to the crabapple form-based code. And that's why you have some revision pieces on your dais, is that on the, how should I explain this? If you look at that revision of the code, that you have in front of you, at the top there's red, and it says, this table expands the categories of Table 8 to delegate specific functions and uses within transect zones. Additionally, the use allowances and requirements in Article 9, administrative permits and use permits, apply to this article. So instead of messing with the definition within the crabapple and Deerfield form-based code, we're not going to have the definitions, correct, Sam?
Correct.
Right. And how we're handling it is by this new revised version of the table for each Deerfield and crabapple. So basically what this says is that instead of listing out all of the administrative permits that are permitted in the form-based code, it just refers back to Article 9, which calls out all of the different administrative permits, which includes the temporary fireworks facility. Okay? So that's why basically when you make your vote, you can just withdraw RZ 2013 because we'll no longer need it. We're not doing anything with it, correct?
And 15.
I'm sorry?
And RZ 2015.
Right, and 15. So when you make a vote, you can ask or make a motion to remove or withdraw RZ 13 and 15. And then we have the table, which was RZ 2014, and you'll use the revisions that I gave you that has a big revised stamp on it. And that's our proposal change. And then definitions again, like we'll withdraw RZ 2015. And then again, the table for Deerfield, which is RZ 2016, we're asking you to just change that header that's in you have two of these, of the revised RZ 2016. And then finally, what we will be doing is coming back to you with Section 64.395, uses prohibited in all zoning districts. So you can't vote on this. This is just informational because it hasn't been properly advertised in an adequate time, or we didn't advertise. So with that said,
any questions for Robin?
If you guys are ready, we can go ahead and you can make your appropriate recommendations.
Let's go forward. Would someone like to make a motion with regard to the acceptance of these, the first text amendment? Because we're going to go through them sequentially, right?
Yeah, RZ 10, yeah.
Yep.
I move we accept RZ 20-10.
Is there a second?
With proposed changes, right?
With proposed changes. Thank you.
Oh, with the changes discussed,
With
yeah.
the changes.
I second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'm
Opposed?
sorry, who seconded? I was writing. Okay.
Jan did.
Okay.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Would someone care to move on to 2011?
2013, right?
We're dropping 2013.
2013, we're dropping.
That's the C1 zoning district.
So let's, I'll make the motion that we accept RZ 20-11, the changes as noted.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It passed unanimously.
Okay, RZ 2012,
I move we accept RZ 20-12 with appropriate changes.
I second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
okay, RZ 2013,
This is for withdrawal, right?
yeah.
I move that we withdraw RZ 20-13.
Second.
That was Commissioner Nolte, yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Okay, RZ 2014,
RZ 2014, move that it be
Make a motion
Approved.
that we approve.
oh, please go ahead.
Second.
RZ 20-14 with changes.
see, that would be
The changed header.
correct, yeah.
And RZ 20- all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm sorry, who
It's
made the
unanimous.
motion and the second on that last?
Jen motion, and I believe Fred was the second.
I can't hear any friggin' thing.
Ken was the motion, Frank second. Ken made the motion.
Okay. There's no Ken. Okay. RZ 2015, the definitions for Deerfield form-based codes, so that would be a withdrawal.
Withdrawn. Be it moved that RZ 20-15 be withdrawn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. RZ 20-16, be it moved that it be accepted with appropriate changes.
I'll second that.
In favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous.
Okay. Great. Thank you. So with that, I don't know if there's any, I don't have any other items, but any questions? Or we do have a meeting in August. We already have another preliminary plat on the agenda. So I believe that'll be a short meeting. So we only have a preliminary plat, so.
Okay. Well, I believe if there's nothing else, we can move to adjourn. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
I'll second him.
All those in favor? Aye.